Tonight we're so grateful to welcome the editors Kerry Spencer-Prey and Jenn Lee Smith. I had the pleasure of speaking with them earlier today, and I'm grateful to have met them and that they could come and speak tonight at Benchmark Books and add us to your fun here in Salt Lake. I look forward to reading the book and hearing from some of you tonight as contributors. And then after things are over, after we do questions and answers, we will ask any that are here as contributors to sign copies for our customers. And does there anybody have any questions before I turn the time over to our editors tonight? Okay, well, with that, then I'll turn the time over to Jenn, and you can choose to use this or not.
Can everyone hear me? Okay, so maybe I don't need to use this. Hi, thank you so much. Such an honor to be here at Benchmark. You are the last bookstore in our June tour of I Spoke to You with Silence. So, yes, thank you so much. And I guess I should start with the origin of this book. It was many years ago. I was at UCLA. I was just coming out and went to the bookstores and was like, there's got to be something about queer Mormon women. As I identify as a cisgender woman, there was none. And then I was like, there was got to be a film, and there wasn't. And so I got it in my head that I would do both at some point. So it's been a long process, on this journey. Hello, welcome. And but it really took off, I think, when I met Kerry at Affirmation Conference, and for those of you who don't know, it's a conference for Mormons to gather. And it just, she said, got this idea, what do you think? And she's like, oh yeah, I got some ideas. And they're really good ones. So I'm really grateful and blessed. And so yeah, I guess I think for tonight we want to share a little bit about our experiences, just our narratives, right? And I think in terms of film and books, I've always just wanted to share with the brethren, like, these are our experiences. This is who we are. We're not lying. Like we're here and we're queer, and we're not necessarily like the ones that you see who are in missionary badges and right, whatever. There's so much more of us from different demographics, and sadly, I just don't feel like we're in a very good system that allows us to speak, and so we have to do it in creative ways. But I think we're done with that. I mean, that's just so exhausting. And this book it breaks the ice. It breaks down the walls, the barriers to silence. And we think of it as an opening for other voices to be heard. And there's many different ways that can take shape, And so it's very exciting that ours is the first of its kind. And yeah.
Yeah, when I came out, I literally didn't know a single queer Mormon woman at all, like not even one.
Yeah.
Like, I found a book by Lisa Diamond in the library, and I read it, and I emailed her, and I was like, hi. She wrote the foreword to this book. I was so excited. I was like, oh my gosh. But like, not even one. Didn't even know a single one. I knew one lesbian in the entire world, and I didn't know them. I'd never met them in person. I just met them on Facebook, and I messaged them, and I'm like, hey, do you know anybody that I could talk to at all? And she gave me like one or two names, and then I joined Affirmation, and I met Jenn, and we put the book together because we don't want that to happen to a single person ever again. We don't want somebody to Google and find nothing. And that's not fair. That's not a way to exist. We have this habit as Mormons, like if you're not a cisgender man, you have to wait to speak. You have to have somebody ask you a question. You're not allowed to say things. And we decided that was nonsense. We're just going to say whatever we want anyway. So here we are.
Yes, feel free to clap.
Yes.
All the contributors deserve that.
They do.
This is not just ours. We're, you know.
It took us years to get this many
collaboration.
together. It was actually harder than you'd think to get people to say things. And we did a lot of sort of gentle social bullying of our friends to get them to write things for us. But I'm so glad that they did. I'm so happy with the things that they shared, and I'm so happy that they are out there and available now, and that what happened to me never has to happen to anybody else again.
And we are grateful for the allies who are not represented in this book, and this is a very interesting demographic here at Benchmark, and I'm actually really very happy, because yeah, like Written Vision was different. It was predominantly, people represented and folks represented in the book. We need allies, like we need allies in our community. I think we have similar traumatic religious trauma, perhaps, and ways, and we see each other, right, online. Some people are very good at online.
Some people are better at speaking
So
than other people.
I did totally wrong. Yeah.
You are very good, yeah.
I may not be that great tonight. I'm a little tired. I think you're out of the camera.
That's fine with me.
Are you sure? Kind of nervous because there is a camera. I don't know what it is. I'm not sure I can ham it up tonight. Chris.
It's all casual, little pressure.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool.
Now Kerry is fully in frame.
So glad. So glad.
Yes. What else?
I mean, I think that's the gist. We want to share some little excerpts for you. We have some contributors here, and we would love for them to come read for you a little bit. We told them yesterday that they could either read their own essay or an anonymous essay. So we will still offer that choice, although everybody else yesterday did their own essay, and that was great. But who do we need to bully to go first?
I don't know. We always call on Melissa first.
We
but
do always call
don't
on
need
Melissa
to.
first.
Yes.
And then we
brave.
also harass Becca next.
Yes.
Like that's part of the pattern.
That's
So
kind of how we do.
we could switch it up and we can harass you first. You want to read for us?
Is it harassing if it's consensual?
It can be.
Okay.
That's a different discussion.
Okay.
We'll step out of frame now.
Okay, perfect. Hi, so I'm Becca Barris. My essay is on page 190. It's called My Lord Has Come.
Excuse me? What are
yeah.
your pronouns?
Oh, she, her. Those are my pronouns. Thank you so much. Sorry, was that a hand or is that? Okay, adjusting. Okay. So the title is My Lord Has Come. The title comes from a choir song that my wife sang, and it really touched me, and it's just kind of been a corner piece of our relationship. So I am just going to start writing then. Thanks again for coming to my performance tonight. That was really cool of you. I read and reread the message in the little blue box a couple times as I decide how to respond. I set the phone down, take my meds, brush my teeth, wash my face, scoop out the litter box. I still don't reply because I would like to play it cool, even though I am desperately not. The next morning I type, I'm an incredibly cool person, so adding a winky face. It's important she knows I don't take myself seriously, that I'm casual and low pressure. I'm flirting in the same offhand way I flirt with most straight girls. I know she's not interested in me. Heaven forbid I become a living manifestation of the wayward lesbian preying on the good and righteous straight girl trope. She is good and righteous, and she is straight, and I am not straight, so I am neither good nor righteous, and I should keep my uncleanliness as contained as possible. At no point do I physically kneel down and vocally ask God to open up a pathway between me and this girl who loves him. Even if I had not lost the habit of praying nightly years ago, I won't embarrass myself or God by asking for something that seems so disingenuous. But God knows my heart, and I know he can feel me begging him to let me get close to her. There's a very specific niche of people with whom I can freely share my true feelings about God and church. Most of the time, I find myself mirroring the words of whoever I'm talking to. A group of stalwart Mormons, I validate their stances, echo their sentiments. A group of understandably jaded queer post or ex-Mormons, I validate their stances, echo their sentiments. The things I say in either setting aren't wrong, exactly, but they're not right either, which is why I surprise myself with my honesty in texting. But seriously, thank you for inviting me. I've been missing God in a big way recently, and during the song about finding rest, he let me know he was there, so thank you for helping with that. The vulnerability makes me feel itchy before I've even finished composing the message. Will she believe me or think I'm just saying what I think she wants to hear? Should I delete the whole thing and send a thumbs up emoji instead? I hit send without revising anything. My openness is rewarded in kind. I know what you mean. There's a lot of chaos within and without the church and Utah and Twitter and the world, and I've been feeling really discouraged by a lot of it. Sometimes it feels like too much to handle. These are the quiet, unsure steps down a pathway neither of us seriously considered before meeting one another.
Melissa?
Hello. My name is Melissa Malcolm King, and my pronouns are she, they, and I will be reading from page 51. The title of my essay is called The Silence That Echoes. Once in Salt Lake City, I boarded a train intending to march with my rainbow family. As I tried to exit the train, a man standing with a group of other men called out, "Hey," N-word. Flashback to childhood in Long Island. We moved into a white neighborhood, N-word and swastikas were pasted all over the house. I wanted to run. Oh, just hold it. Oh, that's really. Should I start again? That's right. Okay, sorry. And I can't hear myself, so you have to let me know. Oh, I'll start.
Yeah, I was just looking.
I don't think it's on.
I don't think it's on.
Oh,
Hello?
yeah.
All right, hello? Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
All right, so I'll try to start again. So my name is Melissa Malcolm King. I'm reading from page 51, and the title of my essay is The Silence That Echoes. Once in Salt Lake City, I boarded a train intending to march with my rainbow family. As I tried to exit the train, a man standing with a group of other men called out, "Hey," N-word. Flashback to childhood in Long Island. We moved into a white neighborhood, N-word and SWAT stickers all over the house. I wanted to run. I wanted to fight, but then I knew the police would side with him. I could run or I could fight, but either way, I was going to lose. I moved further away from him, trying desperately to find the emergency call button. Why wouldn't the door open? The group of men followed me. One of them yelled in a scruffy voice, "Go back to Africa." I didn't look up, but glanced quickly and saw his angry eyes looking out over the Rainbow March. "Between the homos and the N-word, I don't know which one is worse," he stated flatly. I looked around. There were at least 15 people in the car. They would glance up and then quickly look down at their phones. One woman holding tightly to the hand of a young child moved away. I felt like I was in a war zone, but I was being seized as the only soldier surrounded by enemies. After this incident, I didn't have the energy to march alongside my rainbow family. I felt my courage to march and to be who I am. It was stripped away. I felt weak, like a wounded bird. This all took place at the intersection of the temple, the Rainbow March, and where I live near Temple Square. I am literally stuck in these intersections all the time, between the church, my sexual gender orientation, and a society that normalizes racism. I am at the intersection of all these places that I want to call home, but they are connected by disjointed bridges. I will not be erased. I will not be cast aside. Woo!
No?
Okay.
My name is Alma Pellet. My pronouns are she, her. And I thought I'd read one of the anonymous items that particularly struck me. Number 22 on page 117, Out into the Closet. On February 19th, 2020, the LDS Church unveiled their new general handbook with expanded policies limiting transgender members. Later that same afternoon, BYU appeared to lift its restrictions on same-sex dating, a move which quickly eclipsed trans issues in the media. This vignette was written the day after, on a long bus ride home, as a picture on my phone stirred up emotions I didn't even realize were there. A week later, BYU would rescind its approval of same-sex dating. Yesterday, a group of queer BYU students ventured into the Honor Code office to confirm whether the removal of homosexual behavior from the Honor Code meant they could date, hold hands, or kiss without fear of reprisal. They were told they could. Eager to spread the news, they posted jubilant selfies on social media, smiling alongside BYU employees and sharing a kiss under the statue of Brigham Young. A wave of emotion rushed through me as I recognized the freedom and relief in their eyes. That's how I feel when I kiss my wife, I thought. That sense of rightness. And then came another wave of emotion, because while so many of my friends just found the path out of the closet, yesterday brought the news that my wife cannot use her name, or her pronouns, or wear the clothes she feels best in, without incurring restrictions on her membership. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, joy and sadness overwhelming my heart in equal measure, all the while unable to explain to anyone why I'd had a reaction to those photos at all. I knew they'd say, "Well, I don't see why it affects you. You've always been allowed to kiss your husband."
I'm Kerry Prey, pronouns she, her. This is from an essay on page 79. It's number 17, Ordinary Magnificent. Some people think the first general primary president, Louise Felt, was in a same-sex relationship with her counselor, May Anderson. They lived together, worked together. They were called the most ardent lovers, and sometimes they stayed up late at night in their bathrobes, working and talking next to each other in bed. Louise did not live with her polygamous husband. As far as we know, she built her life with May. Skeptics say their love was platonic, that there was no reason to assume it was sexual. Skeptics are always quick to fall back on the idea of sex or body parts, as if their presence or absence is the sum total of what it means to be queer. I spoke this week with my friend Rachel about my experience of queerness. She was working on a book of poetry about Heavenly Mother and wanted to include some poems that spoke to the queer Mormon experience. We spoke at length. We did not speak of either sex or body parts. The other night, Heather was watching a reality TV show. Celebrities wore various costumes, monsters, ravens, aliens, pineapples. Their faces were obscured, and a panel tried to guess who they were based on the voices alone. I lay next to her playing Candy Crush until I ran out of lives. Then I'd reset the clock on my phone and get more lives. Her foot was underneath the covers, the sole of it resting against my leg. My skin was cold and her skin was warm. All day long, the Utah State Legislature had been debating a bill on conversion therapy. The public comment period was filled with stories of people who'd been cured, their wicked inclinations purged, their heterosexual passing marriages now pure due to a practice that has more in common with torture than therapy, a practice that's been shown to increase suicides and be utterly unsuccessful in changing orientation. This, I said to her, leaning my head against her arm, this is the thing they want to change, the thing they find so unnatural, the fact that I want to lie next to you in bed, our skin touching. I want to cheat at Candy Crush while you watch terrible television, and that is so horrible, it is worth torturing children, sometimes literally to death. She looked at me, and she didn't say anything. It took me a long time to admit I wasn't straight, that there was something different about the way I tended to form bonds, about the people I tended to form them with. I'd been so thoroughly convinced there was something dirty and shameful about being queer, but nothing I'd ever experienced could remotely be called dirty or shameful, and so I must not be queer. I would listen to people say, this is about love, this is about identity, and I would be confused. because it was about sex, about body parts. It was about right and wrong and choices. Wasn't it?
Do they happen to have that book of Rachel's here?
Maybe. Probably. Oh no, it's not out yet. Or is it? I don't know.
Brian?
Which one? Mother's Milk?
Mother's Milk.
We do have Mother's Milk.
Oh yeah, I think it's in the second one.
I
the
gave
poem
her a
that
name.
she wrote for me.
It's
Yeah.
out as well.
I gave her a name as well.
It's and I
Yeah.
gave her a name. Yeah.
Is that one here?
There's a poem called "What Kerry Taught Me." It's great.
Yeah, that was good.
It's my favorite poem Rachel's ever written. I don't know why.
That's good poetry right there.
I should find it and read it.
Okay, I'm going to read from page 39. It's called Immersive Theater. And the opening setting is at BYU and kind of goes over the experiences of people of color there, my own. And I'm going to start midway at BYU. Back then, my attraction to women was also safely hidden, especially from myself. It was revealed later after marriage to a man. Now, as a straight-passing woman, I am more aware of the intersection of my multiple marginalities and how they compound my invisibility in many of the spaces I move through. I am not entirely sure of what the path is toward queer visibility. This is the dilemma of discovering one's queerness after a temple marriage and kids. When I felt that powerful chemical attraction to a woman, my immediate reaction was resistance. This is not my story. This is too much to add to a highly sensitive body already wrestling with childhood developmental race, ethnic immigration, and religious abuses and traumas. Sometime later, I signed up for a free immersive theater experience called Red Flags, without fully knowing what it was. I was traveling for work and it seemed like a fun idea. And it was free. I just had to wait to receive a text from a fake blind date 15 minutes before the assigned time. When I did get the text, it was from a woman named Emily. I felt myself freeze. Is that what immersive means? Rising panic eventually gave way to the realization that I was in a city where I knew no one. So why not try? I showed up at our appointed time and waited near the bar. And waited. At last, a cute, quirky, wide-eyed woman appeared before me. I am so sorry. I had to take my dog to the vet, which was close to this coffee shop with a pastry I like, so I had to stop for that, she said with feigned sincerity. Yeah, no worries. Like, it must be really great pastry. Sorry about your dog, I blurted out, feeling the anxiety rising as my eyes darted around the room full of people chatting with drinks in hand. The actress in character took my response as an invitation to talk another 10 minutes about her dog, which allowed me time to lean into the reality and excitement of being on a date with a woman. I was enjoying every mundane comedic detail about their trip to the vet when Emily paused and said, "I've been rambling this whole time. Tell me about you." As I began a made-up story of my own that was pretty close to the truth, she picked up her phone and started to text. Just a sec. She put one finger up while typing away. "I'm telling my friend about the vet. I am so impressed with how much you care about your dog. That is such an attractive quality," I said, now fully invested in my own character as someone who is unfazed by red flags. Really? Normally around this time, my dates say they never want to see me again. I don't know why they'd say that. I'm having a really good time. And I was. She put her hand on my hand and sat closer to me. From head to toe, I felt warmth, like from a soft blanket. No one was paying any heed, and even if they did, the growing calm and solidity inside my body seemed to matter more in that moment than anything that was happening around us. My normally shaky sense of self came into focus for a few brief seconds. "Do you want a kiss?" she asked, leaning in. There was a space of quiet that lasted a breath long enough to realize that I had resisted or fought the invitation of the last hour, and that this question, meant for humor and fun, was now too serious for me. I mumbled something as I backed away and flew out of the room into the night. Later that evening, we spotted each other at a gathering where I apologized for breaking character, explained that I had grown up in a highly demanding heteronormative religion. I probably said I was Mormon, and no further explanation was needed. Her eyes lit up. She knew something about that, and not just because she was also raised in a religion with similar demands, Judaism, but because her Mormon cousin came out as lesbian a few years back after marrying a man. As I stood speechless, she added, "I didn't know there were Asian Mormons." I laughed and we hugged as I replied, "I didn't know Mormons had Jewish cousins." All of me came together for that brief moment. We saw each other, appreciated our differences, and I thought, so this is what visibility feels like.
I found Rachel's poem. We're going to read it because it's awesome. Not just because it's called What Kerry Taught Me, but because it's the poem she wrote to speak to the queer Mormon experience. It says, "The mother loves variety, all the messy flowers and all the messy gardens, all of the spindly, leaning trees and all the spindly, leaning forest, all the weird fish and all of the weird, deep and shallow seas, all of the wild and tame animals and all of the wild and tame places animals live, and all of the 7 colors in all of the more than 7 rainbows, and the more than 7,000 colors without. Don't ask her to choose a favorite. She can't. We're the ones that pick and choose and demand rigid categories." It's a good poem. Love Rachel. So we can talk about whatever you want to talk about now.
Yeah, this is a first for us with this, with a bunch of men. And yeah, cisgender men, I mean, totally correct me if I just totally made a mistake about that. Thank you.
I'm non-binary. But
Yes, thank you for correcting me. I love to be corrected.
So I will be the bold one and ask a question first.
Okay,
So
Jacob.
there's a lot of contributions in this book. There's like a dozen, like more than a couple dozen, right? Or there's like 30?
Like 30, I
30?
think? Yeah.
So as you were editing the collection, you know, everyone's Mormon experience is so different from, even between the two of you, right?
Uh-huh.
One of you is a person of color, the other person is white.
I'm very white.
Yeah, I'm so white. I look at the sun and I get sunburned. So
I mean, I burn the moonlight, I'm that way.
Yeah.
No.
So what do you think are some of the themes that stood out regardless of background as you were compiling this collection?
39 contributions we have in this one. I mean, the biggest theme was obviously from the title of the book, silence. No matter what these stories were, there were 1,000 reasons they'd never been told. And a lot of those are just that we live in a faith and a culture that isn't particularly interested in our experience. We're an afterthought if we're thought of at all. We're sort of like the people that serve, the people that matter. And that was a very common theme, is that there was people trying to tell stories that they didn't even have the words to tell. They couldn't even escape the very Mormonness of their stories. They would try to apologize for them, or we would have people write full essays where they never talked once about their own queerness, but they would talk about everybody else's. They would say, they would take something that was incredibly painful and try to put a positive spin at the end, and we're just like, stop, just tell the story. You don't have to spin this. You don't have to make this a Mormon story. Your experience is enough. And that was something that we noticed a lot as we were working on it.
What sort of fears did you have, if any, as you put this together, and how did you confront those? Maybe doubts or worries about the project, any kind of things like that. I'm just interested in kind of the emotional journey that it was, because we talked a lot about the catharsis and like how just uplifting, edifying this can be. But I've found that I imagine it couldn't be without some trembling as well, and I'm just interested in that part of the journey.
I can speak to fears. I have had a lot of fears. As an immigrant in Utah, I've had to do a lot of religious trauma therapy, but also mostly a lot of racial trauma therapy. I'd say I've had to do more of that than the religious. And I feel like I've been in fear my entire life. Like right now I feel fear, I'll just be honest. Like I'm in a room and I do this room and I feel fear, whereas last night I didn't as much. But I'm learning to feel that in my body and just, it comes from within, right? For all of us. We all feel fear. And we have to get to that point, where we're like, I'm good, I'm safe. With this book, it just escalated, it just highlighted all of my fears all at once. Like I'm kind of a masochist. I really do think I am just that way. When I was a child, my dad said, I saw a water buffalo. I was like this little, and I was like kind of scared of it, and then I was like, let's run to it. And I like ran towards the water buffalo. So that's like me in a nutshell. This book was probably a really bad idea.
Yeah.
It was that water buffalo I should not be running towards, but yeah, like I wanted to face those fears. I feared that people would not think I was queer enough to edit this book, because I am still married to a man that I met when I was a baby at BYU, and I learned a lot about suffice to say, I learned a lot about partnership. We both learned a lot about partnership and what that means and how to be individuals within that partnership, etc. And I feared that in many Mormon spaces, I'm often overlooked. People of color, we get together and we're like, yeah, that's just the way it is. Even at affirmation, we're overlooked, right? And in the queer community, it's like as a geographer, I paid attention to space, so I'd go to a gay club and I see, all the hot-looking white men are here in the center dancing. Then it just kind of, and then the black femme, fat black and femme are like out on the outskirts. That's reality, right? So there's that fear that I'm a person of color, so I won't be taken seriously within the Mormon space, within the queer. We're within the queer space, within the gay, which is like really predominant. It's the gay male space. It's that's just kind of the way it is. I guess there's a lot more fears than that, but yeah. Would you like to add anything?
No, I think you did very good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your question.
Kind of want to add to that a bit. As a contributor, there was a definite amount of fear to get over at the time of who in the church is going to see this and how is that going to affect my life, because I was working for the church at the time. I was like, can I do some job over this? Blessedly, my life has changed quite a bit since then, so I'm not so worried about that. But just to have that out where more people can see it, because nobody cares what I put on the internet. Just having that in a physical book, somebody could sit down and say, why did you write this? It was a huge job to be able to do.
And we're so proud that you did it.
Along those lines, I'll ask the question: is what would you recommend to people today that are still feeling unseen or they haven't been able to express themselves, or they're uncomfortable expressing themselves as their true selves? Do you have any thoughts on how they can express themselves, where it's safe to do so, etc.?
I mean, choosing to talk about these things was probably one of the biggest acts of faith that I've ever had to do. You have to take a giant step, and you don't know if there's going to be a ground beneath your feet when it happens. You don't know what's going to happen. And once you take this step, you find people, and that is a really wonderful thing. So like, I would say there's a lot of fear, but if you have faith and hold to that faith, that it will be okay. And the path that you find may surprise you. I always thought that by leaving the church, by coming out as queer, by marrying a woman, that would mean that I was stepping completely away from God. God was not a part of my life anymore. And that's not what happened. I took the step of faith, that leap of faith out, and God came with me. And not only did God come with me, but God got bigger and more beautiful. And God was suddenly something so much more profound than the Mormon God of my childhood, and so much more beautiful. And somebody that was not at all intimidated by the mess of my life. And that was a really wonderful thing.
Yeah. Preach.
Was there anything as y'all were compiling this, as y'all were doing this project, was there anything that surprised you? Anything that was different than you expected or anticipated it would be? Whether it was harder or easier or...
I mean, it was hard, yeah. Like, this was our pandemic baby. We literally turned in the manuscripts for this during lockdown. And, like, the world was falling apart, and we were sobbing our way through these essays again and again. It was wrenching. It was a wrenching thing to do, and that was challenging. Anything surprise you, Jen?
It surprised me how many submissions we got, like so
We
many
did.
submissions.
It took us a really long time to get a big enough core that we could get the proposal for the book in. And then we did a call for papers, and we were surprised how many we got. We had beautiful stories from all over the world. It's a worldwide collection.
Oh yeah, there's some chapters in Portuguese.
There's some chapters in Portuguese. We have people from all over in there.
Yeah, all over.
Yeah, there's Lise Bobby's essay, there's Kel's essay.
Yes,
Kel
Lee
is
Bobby's
in
from Singapore.
Kel's from Australia.
And then
Where's Naji from?
Naji's from Navajo. There's I want to say Navajo.
Navajo.
Dene.
Uh-huh.
And then one from Poland.
Yes, that's right, one
Yeah.
from Poland.
Yeah.
So we got a lot, and we got them from all over the world, and we were delighted by that, because people had been waiting to talk, and they just never had a place to do it. And that was really wonderful to see.
Yeah, I was surprised that it got done at all, honestly. My mental health was not good during this period of time.
Right, yeah.
And I'm still kind of, ugh. But I think you pulled us through. Like, there's days when I was just like, I can't, Kerry, I can't, yeah.
Like,
it's
fun.
too much, it's too much.
It's a lot, it was a lot, it was a lot. There was a lot of,
Yeah.
like, every time I had to do an edit, I would have to spend about 3 days just in bed crying for 3 days after, because it was a lot. It was a lot.
There was a lot of tears, but
Makes it sound like a really depressing collection.
It's
not that
It's
depressing,
actually
but it
pretty
is
funny.
sometimes funny.
Sometimes.
Sometimes
a lot of it's
wrenching.
funny. Sometimes a lot of it's joyful. A lot of it's celebratory.
But the next time we do a
Sometimes it's
collection, it's
wrenching.
going to be only joyful.
Yes. Follow-up question.
Speaking of that too, it's like, since you mentioned the next collection.
Yes.
Like, how can we support y'all in that endeavor? Because I mean, this seems like not just like a landmark publication just for queer Mormons, but like just for all of Mormon studies. This seems like something that is very groundbreaking in a lot of ways. And so
We would love support.
We would love
Just
support.
totally
Yeah.
volunteer and any sort of like input, like suggestions.
If you find a friend and they can write, like,
Yes.
send it to.
And
Yeah.
then I think you having that platform, where people are listening to you, it always helps, right? And I'm learning from Kerry that in Twitter, a lot of times it's more helpful for another person to randomly pick up your thread and then like retweet it and that sort of thing. Thank you. Worked hard. Like we help each other, right? Like we're collaborative. That's kind of how we started in human civilization, is collaboration. And then suddenly we took this weird turn to become totalitarian. I digress. But yeah, no, I think that it feels better in collaboration, it just does. It just does. So, yeah, thanks for that question. Just you asking that question is really helpful. Yeah, we're not here to we're not here to make anyone feel bad. Like, we're just like, these are our stories.
Yeah.
And like, if you see yourself in it, which I hope you do, I hope you get to talk about that and share that with your friends and with your communities and online, with your children, with the president. I don't know. Like, I don't know who you know. If you know the prophet, I mean, that doesn't hurt. I've been trying to reach the prophet for a while with stuff, with films. For a long time. I think I'm still healing from thinking that was my calling, right? And that's a hard lesson. I feel like a lot of us have had to go through. So I can look back and say I really tried, I really tried. But I don't know who they are. I don't know who they are. I don't know what they see. I don't know what they're thinking, what their motivations are. I have no idea. But the church I grew up in taught me to serve one another, to care for each other, taught me compassion. It taught me hard work. And it taught me to be Christ-like, which is to see someone that I might not know and get to know them better and talk to them and tell me your story. Like, who are you? That's the religion I grew up in.
So, my question is coming from somebody who is cisgendered and gay. You mentioned that when you're not a cis male, it can be kind of hard to find that time where you feel comfortable that you can speak up. So my question is, how can we do better? How can we make it more comfortable for people who are kind of on the fringes, feel like they do indeed belong right there with everybody else? Because truly, you do. So how can somebody who is cisgendered, like, how can we reach out to help lift up those who do feel trodden upon and to feel like they belong? How can we do that?
I think one of the biggest challenges of being in a marginalized population in the church is that sense that you have to wait to speak until you're asked. And so probably one of the most helpful things you can do is ask. And just say like, how do you think? What's your experience? To make a conscious effort to include the marginalized, because they won't know that they can do it on their own, because there's so much implicit silencing that happens in the church. And I think that we don't always even know that we're doing it. We don't always know. I still catch myself sometimes not saying something when I have something to say because I'm waiting for somebody to ask me to, or waiting for permission to speak. And that's an impulse I fight. And it would be nice if we could all break that impulse and just say what we want anyway, but it's hard. And it takes practice, and all it really takes is somebody to ask you to say something, and you can have so much to say. So that's what I would suggest.
And yeah, leading with your heart, I mean, we feel it. We feel it. We know when you're being genuine and sincere, and that you actually see us in a room. That's all. You've probably been there before yourself.
A little bit, yeah.
So that.
Thank you.
The back and then come up here. Yeah?
These last two questions are like really a thread, a segue about being allies. And even though the context here was you're not queer, so you can be an ally. But it's not that binary. It's really a level beyond that. It's really about how can people be allies to other people, in what ways, and could you talk a little bit about that? What does that mean? Because it may mean marching with a flag for one person. It may mean something else for someone else, and yet how do they feel legitimately, yeah, I am an ally, I really am trying. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it does make sense.
I think it's the small things that you do that make a really big difference in your work. Like, what is that word when you're kind of, I mean, there's rainbow capitalism, right? So there's you can, on the, you know, you're doing it for your own ego, for your own
Performative allyship.
Performative allyship,
thank you,
yeah.
thank you, Melissa. Performative allyship, like that's something you just got to check within yourself.
Yeah.
Like, what is my true motivation for this action? I guess.
And one of the hardest things I think about being an ally is that it requires you to challenge your own assumptions. And this is something we had to do more than we expected to do when we started working on this book 6 years ago. We started looking for stories of queer Mormon women, only women, as if that was the only marginalized gendered group in the church, because we had been thinking in Mormon binaries. There is male, there is female, there is good, there is bad. Mormonism is a very binary faith. And we had to realize that because we'd been thinking in binaries like that, we had unintentionally erased so many people in that there were so many more experiences than we had expected. And you have to be willing to challenge your own beliefs without necessarily feeling threatened by it. Like, we're all raised in the world we're raised in. We know what we know when we know it. We don't know what we don't know until somebody shows us that we didn't know it. And we need to do it without getting defensive. And that takes practice. It takes practice to be able to be corrected and say thank you instead of getting defensive. But it's possible. And that's, I think, one of the most important things allies do is they listen. And instead of ever getting defensive or arguing back, you think about your assumptions. Why am I getting defensive? What's being challenged here? What can I just do to listen? And that is something all of us do. We all do that, and it's something that takes practice.
Even being in the LGBTQ community doesn't absolve you from seeing other minorities around you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
You
true.
said it.
It does, yeah. And we don't realize the things we aren't seeing. Like if I was in a room and there was only white people, I might not notice. Other people would. That's like a challenge that you have to look at and be willing to say oh, and figure out what to go forward from there.
So I know I've asked a question before, and I know it's hard to pick favorites. It's like picking a favorite child, right?
Well, we're not going to pick favorites when
We're
the
not gonna-
authors are here.
I know, but I do want to ask a question. It's not the favorite as much as it is like.
Those are my favorites.
As much as it is, was there an essay that you felt like was, as you were maybe editing the book, that you felt like was very paradigm shifting for you because it wasn't from maybe your perspective, or was maybe a perspective that you thought, wow, this needs to be told?
I loved Najee's essay.
Can you just give us like a teaser?
Yes, I'm going to read some from it because it's amazing. Let's see here. It is on page 22. I was born December 17th, 2001 in Cedar City, Utah, as a new member to the I can't even say that. Do you know how to say that? Assiniboine tribe. My federal name is Najee Haska runs through. When I was born, my family was going through a hard time. Mother says the sound of my laugh and my first smile out of the womb made any following trials worth it. I am the 5th son and the last of her 7 children to come into the world. While my parents were still together at the time, she had a sinking feeling that she would be raising me on her own. As a child, I would wear tutus and play with dolls. My favorite was the traditional doll my mother made. It was hand-sewn, stuffed with buffalo hair, decorated with glass beads, with a body of hide and a head of hair from a horse's name. I called her Bluebird Woman, after a character from my favorite movie to watch as a child, Hallmark's Dreamkeeper. It's a 5-hour miniseries I watched on repeat, like other toddlers watched the latest Disney blockbuster. Dreamkeeper is about a boy and his grandfather on their way to the gathering of the nation's powwow in Albuquerque, New Mexico. On their journey, his father tells traditional stories of the First Nation people in North America. I related to the Native women and their traditional roles in old societies. Often it felt as though I was projecting myself on the doll my mother made me. As I grew older, I became more aware of the spirits trapped inside my body. My mother always told me she would love me no matter what I became and would be there for whatever I needed. She raised me in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, where I first found comfort in God. Despite the homophobia and transphobia exhibited by the saints around me, I knew they were not evil but misguided, as humans often are. Instead of allowing the few bigots to affect me, I tried to focus on the support from those in my ward who have watched me grow up. They see me for the beautiful and creative person I've become and genuinely love me for who I am. Dealing with the traditional genders of my people and those of my religion has always been complex. The feelings of acceptance from a community vanishing and the feeling of ignorance from a community that is growing every day has caused turmoil in my earthly body. I feel pressure from others to categorize myself and thereby satisfy their quick judgments or superficial understanding. I've found that not fitting into a distinct societal cubicle can be upsetting to those who need it to fit everyone they meet to their personal worldview. Traditionally speaking, I consider myself a Wicta, a two-spirit. Two-spirit is a term coined in the late 1980s to early 1990s, replacing the outdated term Beardach. Beardach is a blanket term used to try and categorize the many different genders each tribe had. This is different from being gay or transgender. Two-spirit means I have both a strong masculine spirit and a strong feminine spirit. My feminine side is drawn toward female fashion, dolls, and traditional female roles, such as beading and skinning and butchering. Wicta is a word for which there is no English equivalent. It breaks my heart to know that what I find what my people call chante waist, a good heart, or what English refers to as love, that someone outside of my culture may not fully understand or accept. This keeps me up at night. In the LDS religion, I am taught that a man and a woman complete each other. I wonder, if I already have both a male and a female spirit inside me, then have I already completed my search for chante waist? Has my male and my female already been joined? Is this part of my life already over before it begins? Or is there anyone out there for me? So yeah.
Wow.
Right? I love that one.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like Christina Moray's on page 161, and I won't read from it, but it's called My Self-Acceptance. And what struck me about that one was just her level of positivity about the church, about, you know, her having, her perspective, you know, about and her testimony that, you know, about and using the language of the church to affirm herself was very surprising to me, and how faithful she is.
That's one of the Portuguese ones.
Yes, and there's a couple of them.
There's 2 Portuguese essays, yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
I have 2 questions. Will you do another book?
What will we do or will we do?
Will you? That's my first.
Yes, we're doing more.
Okay. Second
If
question.
you want one.
Okay, my first question is, I want to delve deeper into something that you said, and I think you were a little reticent to elaborate on that. Everybody has been sent on this earth for a particular purpose. You mentioned that you thought this might be your calling. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? And do you feel the same calling, or do you feel the same way she does about it?
It's true, my freaking patriarchal blessing keeps being right over and over again. I mean, I do feel that way. I don't know that it's a calling that I sought for, but when we did it, it felt right, like this was what I was supposed to be doing. Which is a very Mormon way to look at it. Sometimes I try to not think the way that a Mormon would think about things, but I've given up on that. Like, you can't wash that off. You can try, you can be like super gay and do all sorts of things, but like you can't wash the Mormonism off.
And I'm okay with that, you know?
Yeah.
To an extent.
It is nice. It was a nice sort of surprise when I left the church. You think you're leaving your entire culture and you don't. nobody can make you less Mormon. They can excommunicate you, but that doesn't do anything. It doesn't matter. You are who you are, and it can be beautiful too. That the outside of the church is just as much part of Mormonism as the inside. It's no less valid. It's still who we are. It's still our culture and our identity, and there is a comfort in that. Nobody can take that away from me. Doesn't matter what dudes in Salt Lake say.
Well, the dudes in Salt Lake really make 100% of the decisions.
For the institutional church.
For the institutional church. And I just thought if they only knew, if they only see, like, this, how hard we're trying, and not just cast us off and just assume we're sinners making bad choices.
You don't get answers to questions that you don't think to ask. And that's one of the weaknesses there. So, I mean, I feel like both of us have stopped waiting on Salt Lake to ever do the right thing in this particular place. But we've also sort of discovered that doesn't matter. That they can't take away. They can't take away.
In fact, there's a lot of freedom in not feeling that obligation anymore. And at the time I thought it was a calling because I really did want to. My family in Taiwan, I mean, it's my family, right? It's my grandparents. They're one of the original members of the church in Taiwan. And my mother is very, very, very LDS. And so is my brother. So I didn't want to disappoint them. So I was constructing a narrative in my mind of how I can stay and still be happy-ish. And that was I felt called to produce Jane and Emma about Jane Manning James. And I thought, okay, this is it. Like, this is going to help my testimony. I'm going to be day in, day out with the Sisters of Zion, and they have the most beautiful souls and hearts you'll ever meet. And and I felt so great. And then they decided to impose a social media fast the weekend that we opened. And I know that they know that what they were doing. And then I thought, okay, this is interesting. Maybe I need a new narrative. I gotta watch out for my own health. My health took a huge dip after that. That was really hard. It's still hard to think of that. Jane Manning should be talked about in curriculum. My friend Melissa Newey, she wrote a curriculum. Where is it? Why isn't she more prominent in church history building? Why isn't the film being shown where Testament was being shown? It's a film about a faithful human being who walked 800 miles to meet the prophet. She had a vision. Why don't we know about her? Is it because she's black? Nodding your head. I don't know what they're thinking. I just know what they do. I'm sad about it.
Thank you for being vulnerable with us.
I love that. I don't know what they're thinking. I just know what they do.
And on that happy note, it's time for refreshments.
Wait, one more quick question to if this was that was a perfect narrative arc to the whole thing, but I do have to ask about the cover art.
Oh no.
Jessica Booth designed the cover.
Okay.
Who works for the University of Utah Press.
Is it an original piece that she made for it?
She
or?
found the art on somewhere
I
for
think
free, and then she modified it.
Yes.
for the
Yeah.
cover.
It went through a couple iterations.
Okay. And
We-
how did you
we
all
wanted-
feel yeah.
I mean, it's a nod. There's another book called Habeas
Viscus. I think?
Viscus. There's
Yeah.
a nod to. I think it also
A famous feminist.
really
piece
spoke
of
to
literature.
the diversity of the collection, which is something we really
And
liked
then they were
about
able
it.
to use elements from it in
Yeah.
the chapter division, so it gave it a nice.
We
food
tried.
red, too.
to get as many different viewpoints as we could, and I love the way that that's sort of illustrated in the cover. That bringing together of many silent voices.
Yeah, it's good.
It's
good.
If you can, I can project this somehow.
This is the,
As you can see, habeas viscus, and the title is Racializing Assemblages, Biopolitics, and Black Feminist Theories of the Human
Yeah,
by Alexander Wahaley.
cool.
It's very dense reading though.
Our book
Ours
is not so dense. No.
It's stories.
It's stories. They should mostly be very easy to read. You can skip the introductions if you want to.
Don't skip the introduction.
Don't skip the introductions.
Very good.
I would definitely read the foreword by Lisa Diamond, who
Yes.
has been living as an ethnographer in Salt Lake Valley for a long time.
I was so happy when she wrote the foreword because she was the book.
She was my hero. I mean,
She was the
really
one book
saved
that I
me.
found
2008.
about
Sexual fluidity.
yeah.
And then we worked on a film together called The Dilemma of Desire on Showtime. Check it out, Dilemma of Desire. Not having clitoris is a fallacy with a PH. Like that's subtitle.
Did you come up with that?
Oh no, I did not. She's the English major.
She's the filmmaker.
Yeah, and so that's how I met Lisa through that. We corresponded, talked a lot, and then I was like, hey, by the way, you know, and she was like, happy to, dude. I have so many students coming into my office all the time, like, I'm gay, but I'm Mormon. Like, what do I do? She's like, I could totally talk about this all day long. Yeah, and then Taylor Petrie, of course, read Taylor Petrie's intro and Kimberly Anderson's.
Okay, some of the intros are really good.
Yeah. Definitely read those.
Just read the whole book.
Just read all. Yeah, it is good. It's good.
Because, yeah.
It turned out well, I think.
It turned out really
I'm a
well.
little biased, but I was very happy. I was actually surprised the first time I read the whole thing through, and I'm like, oh, this is actually good.
I love it. Did you just read that?
I was like, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No, this was like
a
when I
while
was,
ago, right?
the first time I read it all the
Yeah,
way through.
yeah.
Yeah, when we were doing edits, I was like, oh wow, hey,
It
worked.
It works.
Yeah, I love that. Taylor didn't, nobody said no. It was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't have anybody say no, did we?
No, really.
I guess we had like people that we tried to get to write things that
Well,
didn't.
yeah, they're not
but like,
right.
yeah.
I get that.
But, yeah.
Trauma, yeah.
They didn't want to come out or.
Yep.
And there's, anonymous. And there were so many back and forths.
Some people put their
About
names and took their names off, and put their names and took their names off.
Many
and
iterations of names.
I think we had one very last minute change
We
in
did.
the name, like right before publication.
Right before
Yeah.
publication.
She's like, I can't. You got to take it out or let me change it. I'm like, we
Yeah.
can change your name. She's like,
But,
okay.
yeah. Shout out to University of Utah Press.
Yeah.
Hannah New right here, and then Glenda. Yes. Glenda, I think, snuck out. Yeah. Yeah. You were definitely our number one choice.
We feel very lucky to have gotten it. So thank you.
That's it, right? For refreshments. Thank you so much for.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you for coming.